I didn't intend to take a year and a half off. I intended like 3 months, and then things just kind of spiraled out of control. And now I'm back, and I don't remember my thought process for recording all of these quests. So that's gonna be fun. This episode is going to be fucking awful.
No, there'll never be an end.
May 4th, 2005 saw the release of a brand new time-locked minigame in the caves under Lumbridge, the Tears of Gothics. To gain access to this content, we need to entertain a snake with stories of our adventures, as poor Juna here has been guarding this place for thousands of years by herself and is very, very bored. But before we can partake in the juice of account ruining, we need to make a bowl out of some special rock that is across this gorge. To get there, we need to catfish some light spirits to carry us over with a sapphire lantern, and then mine up the rock, and having done so, we give our bowl to Juna for safekeeping and complete the quest, and then proceed to not touch this content ever again because I've gotten XP and skills by mistake enough as it is, and I don't feel like doing it anymore. It's time to return to the land of hard-to-parse dialogue and see what the ogres have been up to since we prevented them from removing Yanil's defenses and then doing absolutely nothing else about the threat of them. Grish and Jigig here is reporting that there is some sort of plague that results in the dead ogres coming back as zombies. Zogres, one could call them. Lacking the capacity to solve their own problems, we are enlisted through a nice little bribe of some super restore potions and freakishly huge chickens to do it for them. The area is barricaded off, so we're going to have to get over it, or just break it down, I guess. Fine, whatever, I don't care. Heading down into the crypt itself, we find ourselves mysteriously drawn to this random skeleton and coffin, which, after investigating, our dude's missing flesh shows up and tries to beat us up. Looting the corpses, we get a branded local tankard, some random papers, and a weird black crystal of an Eldritch Persuasion. Turns out the branded tankard isn't just a generic one, but it definitely belonged to this scummy dude whose name was Brental, who seems to not be able to pay his bar tab anymore. But Brental hangs out with an equally shady wizard of unknown identity, and since this is a town of shady wizards, we just asked the Wizards Guild secretary if he knows what any of the stuff we found is. Which leads us to one Sithic Ince as the most likely source of this dark sorcery. Sithic is stuck in bed from illness and denies everything, so we search his stuff, find some books about drawing, necromancy, and everybody's favorite meat-themed extremist group. Skimming them all, we can now draw Sithic, which serves as confirmation to the bartender that this is indeed the shady wizard from earlier. With all of this evidence, we head back to Zavistik, the secretary, who agrees that Sithic probably did shady shit and gives us a potion to help convince him to talk. Turns out that the potion was not one of truth, but it turns our man into an ogre, who, upon the realization that he is now what he discriminates against, tells us that he set up a spell to kill all of the ogres, and all we can do is to keep the affected ones quarantined. The ogres handling the situation teach us some snazzy new ogre archery methods, the brutal arrows and composite bow, and they also need a ceremonial statue thing from within the crypt retrieved, so we get to go back in there and it's being held by this guy. Killing this guy, we get a lot of nice bones that will feed to some ghost goop later, and the artifact, and that's the quest. Hooray. Continuing our theme of meat-themed extremist groups causing trouble, we have quest number 83, The Lost Tribe. Starting out, Sigmund, the advisor to the Duke of Lumbridge, wants us to investigate reported sightings of goblins in the basement of the castle. We go and talk to a bunch of people around town, and it turns out that the cook saw some weird critter pop out of the wall and run off. Funny thing about this section is you just have to talk to people until it tells you the answer, so you can make the final person be really random if you want. I didn't because I'm boring, but you can. Investigating the area, we clear out this repaired wall and we find a tunnel. Just inside, we find this weird little brooch, so let's go figure out what this is. Going to the resident smartass, he directs us to find a book as Reldo continues to be unhelpful and not do his job as a librarian. Like, this place is 8 shelves. You're telling me he hasn't memorized the location of every book in this place? What is he doing all day? It's very suspicious. But regardless, we find the book on goblin tribes, and this little brooch's symbol is that of the Dorgashan. And the book provides no other useful information, which means we get to go talk to them. Fuck. Bent Nose and Wartface at least do know information that's useful to us, mixed between petty arguments and Bendosian nonsense, but after a very exhausting conversation, we learn how to bow and salute like a goblin. Turns out the Dorgashan buggered off during the God Wars and nobody has seen them since, but the other goblins think they're wimpy cowards who ran away from the glory of battle because of Bendosian nonsense. Going back to the tunnels under Lumbridge, and we get to navigate this mess. Fortunately, the safe path is marked. Unfortunately, the safe path is marked with vague references to goblin clans, so we get to take a very long time cross-referencing the clan book and scribbles, which I shall relieve you from having to experience firsthand with the power of a star wipe. Reaching the end, we find some cave goblins who we very politely bow to, and Miss Stag here tells us that the Dorgashan are peaceful, and that they wandered into the castle basement by accident. We also learn some fun lore about the Dorgashan and how they ended up stuck underground. Returning to the Duke, we tell him that the goblins don't mean any harm and want to be friendly, but apparently that can't happen because some silverware went missing from the basement, and that's a deal breaker. Although Lumbridge is apparently too poor to give the Duke a proper office that isn't his bedroom, so maybe a box of silverware is actually an overwhelming loss? But regardless, this seems really fishy, especially since Sigmund here keeps interjecting racism as we're trying to hold a conversation. A little bit of crime later, we rummage through Sigmund's personal belongings and look what we find. That's right, the uniform of a meat-themed extremist group. So let's see if this fishiness continues by searching their hideout, and oh hey, in the first chest, inside their very not secret base that strangely moves locations depending on the presence or absence of a very large crater behind the castle, we find a silverware. Returning to the Duke, we leverage our accusation and evidence against Sigmund, who is immediately fired, and the Duke gives us a peace treaty to deliver to the Dorgashan. Going back to the goblins, we bring Urtag to meet the Duke, and everything ends well. Well, except for this suspicious shit eavesdropping and laughing like a cartoon villain, but he'll probably not show up for a while, so it's fine. we finally get to do this quest. Now, fortunately, with quest list changes from years ago, you don't auto-start quests anymore. You have to actually click accept quest on everything. So we could just ignore it and not get the yellow color of shame. But we still got the intro cutscene when we did Between a Rock, and I just shoved it in front of this. Hooray. Now, we, as a passenger, get arrested just so Veldeban can talk to us about the statue being broken. Not that we know anything. Also, it's to slightly coerce us into doing all of the work to get it fixed. We don't need to go and actually make the statue. The city has a sculptor for that, but we do need to give the model appropriate clothes and props that match the era that the statue is trying to accomplish. So we need appropriately kingly clothes, boots, and an axe. Starting with the clothes, Veramundi can make appropriate clothes, but needs a picture for reference, which we find in the library. She also needs us to provide fuel for her sewing machine, and charges us 200 gold for the clothes. But now our model has some grit. Next is the boots. Saro here had appropriate boots, but he sold them to Drummond, who has them displayed in 2 cases on the opposite side of the room from each other for some reason. He's also a bit of a dick and won't loan them to us for this single project, so we steal them. We yoink the first one when he's not looking, but we need to telegraph the other one through the window. We deliver the boots, and our model now has some Tims. Last is an axe. Cintiri has the actual original battle axe, but it's a bit broken and needs an Incando dwarf to repair it. Fortunately, we know one. Thurgo just needs an iron bar to fix the axe, and then we can put some sapphires in the hilt, and that fixes that right up. And now our model has an axe. Also the battle axe. Sadly, this is not the end of our work because we need a face for the statue, and we get to deal with politics. So, the Keldagrim is ruled by 8 companies called the Consortium. Why is it 8? Because they are hopelessly addicted to not getting anything done, apparently, because you kind of want an odd number for tie-breaking purposes, but, you know, whatever. And we need to back one of these groups so that their leader is the face of the statue. Now, this choice kind of makes no difference in the long run, so we're just going to join the Purple Pewter because their name is the funniest. Now we get to go and fulfill a bunch of random mining and smithing resource tasks for the boss to actually talk to us, and then do even more tasks so that the boss will invite us to the meeting. But fortunately, all of this is quite easy to do because you get to pick and choose and just kind of not take a task when it's offered. So we can just load our inventory up with a handful of easy to obtain items and just kind of keep rolling those dice until we get enough tasks that we can instantly complete. We get to join the company, and we come to the next meeting to discuss who the face should be. that's the quest, and this kicks off the entire Dwarven storyline, which I promise is considerably more interesting as we get through it. This quest is just kind of dull. Hooray! We have another mini quest! Enter the Abyss gives us access to the Abyss, which is needed for a couple of quests later. But it also gives us a way to train runecrafting that is less miserable. We start out by talking to this suspicious guy hanging out in the wilderness, who directs us to talk to him in Varric instead. So we find him in the Temple of Zamorak, and he explains that they have access to this place called the Abyss, which can connect to the rune altars, but to give us access, he needs us to help them figure out where the rune essence mine is. It's pretty simple, we just have to carry a scrying orb and commit some industrial espionage. Oddbury in Varrock, Cedrador in the Wizard's Tower, and Krompke in Ardoin are the 3 places we need to teleport from, because the other locations are apparently not good enough, as in they didn't exist. But by doing so, we return back to him, he obtains this information, and now he will teleport us to the Abyss from his location in the wilderness for our fun and profit. We also can get rune essence pouches now, which is excellent. In June of 2005, we got, at the time, the second White Knight's quest. But now it's the first since the quest order changed when Black Knight's Fortress got turned into the Death of Chivalry. And that quest features a certain blue jerk who isn't allowed on this planet yet. Regardless, we talk to Ceramic Vase in Falador Castle, who invites us to join the Falador Secret Police, Temple Knights, provided we can complete a handful of simple tests. Reporting the certification in the park, he brings us to the testing rooms and our exam begins. First task is Certainly, where we need to do absolutely nothing for a little while. And that's done with. Second is Mischievous, and this is a big science puzzle where we need to make a copy of a key and pry open a door. Much like with Pierre the Seer's puzzle in the Fremnik Trials, all of the stuff we need is strewn about the room with a bunch of pointless things thrown in to be confusing. We burn a spade to get a metal stick to jam into the door, put some gypsum powder and water in the tin and make a key impression, then put some copper and tin powder in the mold and heat it up to make the key. We then take some of this stuff and this other stuff to pour on the spade stuck in the door so it gets well and properly jammed in there, yank that first door open, and then unlock the second door with our key, and that is done. Third is lay the table with a memory game. One statue is added of a particular metal and weapon that's been missing, and we can see that it's going to be a bronze with axe. Oh look, it's a bronze with an axe. Fourth is Suspicious with your classic fox chicken grain fable puzzle, where your fox eats the chicken eats the grain, and you can only carry one of them across the rickety bridge at a time. So we grab the chicken by its feathery ass, drop it on the other side, go back and grab the fox, bring it over to scare the chicken, bring the chicken back with the promise of grain, but take the grain to the fox who doesn't care, and then retrieve the chicken to finish the puzzle. Fifth is Circumference with the literary No Man Can Kill Me, Bo, No You're Actually a Girl challenge, in the form of Surly. Since I solved that particular limitation years ago, I punched the lad in the nuts a few times and the room is complete. And that's the quest. We get XP and a hat. Oh look, farming unlocked. Hooray. My least favorite skill. Yeah, this is what I'm going to be doing between episodes. It's farming. I love planting things and waiting for it to grow and then harvesting it and repeating this process. And it takes ages. It's great. See ya, I guess.